Friends, welcome back. This is the third interview with HG Tudor. And if you haven't checked out the previous interviews that we've done, I'm going to leave a link in the description box as well as the pinned comment to those two, which are important to listen to because we're going to be picking up from where we left off. So, first of all, HG, thank you very much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you for your kind inquiry, Doug, and a pleasure to be back talking to you once again.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. So, I know we covered this briefly before, but could you please, for the new listeners, give an introduction to who you are, what it is you do, and HG, specifically how you came to do what you do, and to nip this question in the butt right at the beginning, why you do it? Because the first question somebody's going to have is, why should we trust a narcissist? Why should we listen to this guy? So if you don't mind.
Certainly. Okay, well, I'm a diagnosed narcissistic psychopath. I write and record under the name HG Tudor. It's a pseudonym. My own identity isn't relevant to what I tell you about. I protect that because it is a sensible thing to do to ensure that what I achieve in my personal and private life isn't affected to the contrary by the admission of being what I am. And the fact that I can operate under that pseudonym means that I can be entirely clear and upfront about the way that my mind works and the way that I behave, and similarly the way that similar of my kind behave, so that listeners get all of this detail in a way that they wouldn't otherwise do. I know what I am, and I know myself inside out. I also know my victims inside out, and also others of my kind. So I write extensively about narcissism. I have a blog where there's hundreds of articles about the same subject and over 1,000 videos on my YouTube channel. Why do I do this? Well, quite simply, I want to extend a legacy in terms of the right information and accurate information about narcissism, because there is far too much rubbish out there that repeatedly gets it wrong about the way that my kind function, and there are huge gaps in it. And therefore, in order to ensure that people get that accurate information, I set up my various platforms, and wrote the books and made the videos to give you all of that information, and set up consultations, etc., and a host of material in my knowledge vault so that people gain all of this understanding. You see, one of the things that we need as narcissists is control. The biggest threat to our control is death. And at some point, I will shuffle off this mortal coil. Won't be anytime soon. But the knowledge that I will at one point die is a threat to my control. And therefore, in order to defeat that, I need to live on. And therefore, my work will live on after I physically expire. And that means that I've, in effect, cheated death. And therefore, that final threat to my control isn't the final threat to my control.
Wow.
So I don't do this because I care about people. I don't do this because I actually specifically want to help people. Yes, I do help people by giving them accurate information, but it's done because it's an extension of my legacy. And it fits within the prime aims. So you know, Doug, my kind seek the prime aims: control and fuel, character traits, and residual benefits. So when I do this, it allows me to assert control over people. It allows me to draw some fuel. I don't actually need that fuel. My fuel needs are met in my private life, but it gains a residual benefit. I get paid, and it also chiefly is all about the extension of that legacy. So when people say, well, why should I trust what you have to say? Well, you don't have to. It's not incumbent upon you to do so, and you're under no obligation. But if you didn't, you soon find out that you're going to be left in a worse position than if you did actually trust what I explained to you. Many people think that we lie all of the time. Well, actually, we don't. Where what you understand to be the truth coincides with us seeing it as the truth, we'll use it. Sometimes we'll use a half truth, and sometimes we invent the truth. But in certain instances, the truth as you know it will be used as the truth by us. So we don't necessarily lie all of the time. And I can explain to everybody the way that I think and operate with no repercussion, because you don't know who I am. And therefore, that allows me to tell you the truth. And that's a huge advantage for people. So they're under no obligation to accept what I have to say. But if you've got half a brain cell, you'll soon work out that what I tell you resonates, makes perfect sense, and apply it, and you'll realize that the freedom that you need to gain understanding and escape from a narcissist will come to you far quicker than if you were groping around in the dark trying to turn on the light switch on your own.
I can attest to that too, my man, because one of the things that really impinged upon me in your work and why I knew you were speaking is from the heart the right way. It had a profound effect on me, HG, because I could tell that you were who you said you were. And anybody listening
Yes,
to one video will get that right away. And that had,
exactly.
it was like you were describing what was happening to in my very life and my situations. And it's very penetrating. I think that's why people are drawn to your work.
That's right, Doug.
Because
It
yeah,
resonates because people
it does.
read it and listen to it and they go, that is so spot on as to what I
Mhm.
experience. And then they apply what I tell them to do and they go, oh my goodness, that works. I now understand and I did this and it's helped me. So as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
Mhm.
People often say, well, why is it you're helping people? And as I've pointed out, it's the legacy, but also, well, sometimes people often say, well, you can't be what you are because you help people. Well, I'll say this to you. Ted Bundy, the people are very familiar with who he was. He once saved a woman from drowning. He once returned a purse when a thief had stolen it, and he used to man a suicide helpline. And we all know who Ted Bundy was. So to think that just because somebody is kind and helpful doesn't make them a narcissistic psychopath or a narcissist is somewhat naive, because we can't go around being red in tooth and claw all of the time. Yes, there are some very obvious narcissists who are in your face and they're rude and they're violent and you see it pretty quickly. But there are lots of narcissists who move amongst people and you wouldn't even realize to begin with. Why? Because they operate with such extensive facades, and they have to do, because it's far easier to fit in, to draw you in. We have to be able to do that. And so when people say, oh, no, this person can't be a narcissist, they make donations to charity and they're so lovely and so forth. Well, believe me, that's just part of the facade. And you need to look at a range of behaviors which demonstrates it. And just by saying that, oh, but this person does all of these good acts, that doesn't mean they're not a narcissist. Far from it.
That's a really good point, man. And since you bring that up, we've talked about my cult experience before, and I've noticed whether it was L. Ron Hubbard, my cult leader, my mother, or even what you're talking about, your standard run-of-the-mill narcissist in a relationship. Let's take Meghan Markle, for example. Audience, this guy has 1 million videos on Meghan Markle, and they're fascinating, and they draw a lot of people because he's able to take somebody that we know that's in the spotlight and give the best analysis you'll ever hear. As an example of Meghan Markle, she sets up charities. Hubbard was always setting up charities. It's almost like a split personality, HG, where is that something kind of happening unconsciously more than just the facade, where they feel a need to kind of make balance out their bad deeds in some weird psychological way? Or is that strictly consciously done to say, hey, I'm not a narcissist, I'm not a bad person, look at all the money I give to charity, look at all the good that I do in the world?
There's no balancing out of it, Doug, because that would then assume there's a conscience or a concept of guilt.
Right.
And we don't have that. So you could get a normal person who would realize that they've done something reprehensible and then decides, well, actually, I now must go and do something good to offer reparation for my poor behavior. A narcissist might operate under the auspices of having been caught out doing something reprehensible, and then they would say, well, look, I will make reparation, but it's only for the part of the facade. The narcissist doesn't internally think to themselves, I've been doing lots of bad things, I better do some good things to even out the balance, because there is no self-reflection to that extent, you see. And instead, it's entirely where you're dealing with an unaware narcissist. Remember, lesser narcissists don't operate with a facade, so they can still do good things, but you repeatedly see the bragging or the bullying or the just downright nasty behavior quite often there. And it's the mid-range narcissists who use this facade of thinking they're an empath or being helpful, sometimes based upon this idea of being superior, but still doing a good thing for people. And they don't think to themselves, I know I'm a wrong 'un, but what I'll do is I'll con everybody by pretending to be nice. They honestly think that they're decent people. And Meghan Markle is a prime example of a mid-range narcissist who doesn't know what she is. And having analysed her at length to determine her narcissism, as you've alluded to, although I find her actually a boring and vapid individual because there's nothing behind her, she is so prominent and well known, it would be remiss of me not to utilise her as an example for people to say, look, when this happens, what's actually happening is this. And I break it down in the various analyses that I've done through the numerous videos. And so many people have come to me and said, I didn't know anything about narcissism until I came across your Meghan Markle series. And it's helped me realize that I was in a relationship that was toxic. I didn't realize. And of course, there's other people who just don't like Meghan Markle. So they enjoy my rather sarcastic commentary about her as I talk about narcissism alongside all of that. But she is a prominent example, and it's very useful to utilize her for the purposes of demonstrating all the various facets of a mid-range narcissist in terms of why she does as she does, how she interacts with Prince Harry, how she interacts with extended members of the royal family, the facade that we see, the hypocrisy, which is rampant. Little examples of going along to read a book to some single parent children in Harlem who haven't got 2 brass farthings to rub together, while wearing several $100,000 worth of jewelry and clothing, and not seeing. Now, nobody expects her to turn up in sackcloth, but of course, you could downplay all of that, lose the jewelry, turn up wearing some, pair of Levi's and such like. You don't have to go wearing the designer outfits. But she's, people talk about a failure to read the room. She's blinded by her own narcissism.
Yes.
It doesn't let her see the hypocrisy that she engages in. So she's an excellent example.
Yes.
And of course, I'm breaking down what happened with Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito also, because he is also a narcissist. I haven't yet done my analysis to tell people which one he is, so I'm keeping that close to my chest at the moment. But that's an excellent example, using the body cam footage to show this is what's actually going on here. So people will think, oh, I think he's an abuser, or I don't think, he's a good person. Well, actually, you're watching a narcissist in action. And I take you through his various responses, actions and reactions, and those of the victim, the deceased Gabby Petito, so that people understand. And again, that provides an excellent real life example so people can see it as it's happening. And I have a lot more of those planned, so people can watch videos with real life examples as it's happening and my stop-start commentary on what's going on.
It's great, man, too. I even left you a comment in that Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito asking you if you ever sleep, HG, because the amount of material that you pump out, I don't know how you get these breakdowns done. I don't know how you do your blog. I don't know if there's not 5 of you running around, but your breakdown, I mean, I don't get it, but your breakdown was fantastic. And it's like you said, I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate and a little bit cheesy, right, that we have to use celebrities. The most views that I get on my videos have to do with celebrities, but that's what people know, that attracts their attention. And the Laundrie, the Gabby Petito and Meghan Markle are perfect examples to be able to get the information out that you can teach so well. And you're freaking hilarious, dude. I mean, your sense of humor is awesome. So it's entertaining too. So, and you got to use that too, right, HG, to pull people in and get them interested, Exactly.
Well, I like to think of it as sort of edutainment. So there are certain, and also with Meghan Markle, as I mentioned, because I find her such a vapid character, it is actually quite tedious for me talking about her.
I bet, man.
By having the buzzwords and the catchphrases that I use and so forth, that's part of actually making it somewhat more
I feel you.
bearable for me having to deal with this particular individual. You see, when I analyze other individuals, there's at least some substance there of effect, and there may be some talent in amongst it that's obviously there with narcissism. So let's take Taylor Swift, for example.
Perfect.
There's no doubt about it that she can write catchy music and she can play instruments. So she's got a talent there. But what's Meghan Markle got? She can't really act.
She's not even an actress.
No, she can't sing. She can't dance. Is she hugely intelligent? No. Is she an entrepreneur? No. Is she an inventor? No. She's just this bananatarian, as I call it, that goes around telling everybody else, this is how you should behave. but I'm not going to do it. You all have to do it. You all have to do it. This is how you should live your life. And so that's while she's an excellent example, I do find it quite odious. It entertains me when the occasional sugar wanders along and says, "Oh, you're obsessed with her." I go, "No, not in the slightest.
I doubt it.
It's more my viewers who keep wanting me to create the material.
They're the ones that are obsessed with her. Yeah.
Yeah, and therefore they and those that learn from it, so much the better. If that's what it takes to extend the reach to get more people understanding narcissism and build my legacy, then I'm not too proud to do that. I'll use whatever comes my way.
Perfect. And I know you're telling the truth about it being tedious, because I actually imagined you pulling your hair out, but you know that it's the way to educate people. Because you're absolutely right, and for aspiring narcissists, how would you say that she got to the position that she's at? Because you're absolutely right. She has no talent, nothing to offer. She's literally a human parasite that slithered her way in, but she did that expertly. So does she have a talent in narcissism? Would you give her kudos for her ability to have gotten as far as she had? Because that can't be easy, infiltrating the royal family, going from a shitty actress to getting to where she got, right?
You make a valid point, and she's the epitome of making such a little go a very long way. It's, in actual fact, as I mentioned in one of the videos, she's actually over-promoted beyond her ability of her narcissism, because the rarefied atmosphere that she occupied in terms of joining the British royal family, although she's then distanced herself from it, and making all of these millions of dollars through the various deals, etc., and being one of the most prominent and photographed individuals on the globe, you say, well, fair enough. In that respect, your narcissism has served you well. But the problem is, so many people see straight through her now. Not only, they might not necessarily have seen that she's a narcissist, but they have seen the hypocrisy. They have seen the mistruths and the lies that have been told. And her narcissism is not accomplished enough to deal with all of that. So what happens is, her narcissism somehow got her into the position that she's in, but actually it was too much of a reach for it. So it's ended up putting her in this position, but then maintaining it. So it was enough to get her there, but it actually hasn't got the skill to keep her in the position without being found out. That doesn't mean that she's going to suddenly find herself a pauper and suddenly not being photographed. But what it means is she can get into the position, but then we keep seeing the facade slipping and the schoolgirl errors that are being made and the occasional glimpses of what's beneath there. So that demonstrates that her narcissism isn't as refined or as evolved as it could be for somebody in that position. Ordinarily, narcissists at that level are a superior type of narcissist to the type that she is, so that they are very hard to detect. And in some instances, nobody would really have a clue that they are a narcissist, because the narcissism is so good at keeping it hidden that they've got talent and you think, well, they're just cocky because they're talented, aren't they? Rather than thinking this person's a nobody, but goes on as if they're somebody. Or even the individuals that are so smooth and so polished and charismatic that you're led to think that they are really decent people, when actually they're not. And they're very good at keeping their dark behaviors well hidden and away from the spotlight and away from the press, etc. They evade all of that scrutiny. Because the problem is, her narcissism, in order to assert control and draw fuel, drives her to court so much of the media. And as I mentioned in the downward spiral video, the problem that she's got is the harder that her narcissism drives her to assert control and draw fuel through using PR agencies telling people that she's wonderful and ace, dragging up old articles, and then, as Hello did, speculating about the fact of what she's going to be doing in September. It's like, who gives a rat's ass? You actually haven't got any information. This is just an article about nothing. But the more that she does that, the more obvious it becomes that the hypocrisy and the contrarian behaviors. So then she has to try even harder to get the control by doing what? Pumping out yet more PR material.
Right.
And then the more that that's pumped out, the more obvious it becomes as to what she's doing. So it becomes the law of diminishing returns. And so there will always be a hardcore of people who can't see what she is and mindlessly follow her. But the tide has turned. It's not just in the print and digital media that talk about this. You can see it in social media. And I commented about this recently, that although the positive mentions are higher for her in the formal media, if we can call it that, because of the PR campaigns, social media, the people, it's more and more negative because people aren't being conned anymore by it. They might not see she's a narcissist, but they go, no, you're a hypocrite. I don't like the way that you behave. You say one thing, yet do the other. You act in an entitled fashion. You come across as a bit of a brat, and all of those things, and the popularity diminishes. But more and more, and then alongside that, there are more people who are understanding what she is.
That's really good to hear, because I have a personal, I just find her, like you said, vapid, disgusting, and thank God people are seeing through it, because it seems super obvious, especially once you learn about what you're talking about. But that's good that the general public is sussing it too.
Yeah.
HG,
Yeah.
do you think that, I mean, you have congratulations, by the way, on building the YouTube channel, and the audience has been expanding. You deserve it, because you work so freaking hard at this. Do you think the royal family in any way, or Prince Harry or Meghan, have actually seen your videos, or they've gone their way? Because all he'd have to do is sit down for a day and spend a day with your videos, and he'd have the same experience that I went through when I snapped out of the cult and realized I was dealing with a narcissist. I mean, there sits the solution. Do you think it's ever gotten to him or anything?
I don't think it'll have reached Prince Harry. I suspect that other members of the royal family have come across it, because some of the maneuvers that they have made are commensurate with what I instruct. So I think that they've picked up on it. So things that potentially, it may not be directly that Prince William has sat down and thought, oh, who's this Tudor chap? I'll have a little read of that and I listen to him. But rather there'll be the individuals within the institution that is the royal family that may well have come across it and then have said, I'd advise this approach, sir. And that has then caused an alternative. So there's a possibility of that having occurred, because it is demonstrative with some of the responses that it is aligned with what I've been talking about. And people often ask me, do I believe that Meghan Markle has seen my material?
Good question.
Yeah, again, it's difficult to gauge, because although I have a reasonable degree of prominence, YouTube's a vast space, and
I understand.
What has to be remembered is there's not just my material is narcissism first, Meghan Markle second, but on the internet and YouTube, there's a hell of a lot of stuff which is Meghan Markle first, and maybe nothing to do with narcissism. So it's all about, you know, the theories about the fact that there are no children, the theories about the moon bump, the allegations about poor behavior, the times when her mask has slipped, and then just general tittle tattle and gossip. And of course, it's some of those individuals that do it more in terms of a speculative gossip type of style that have found themselves cancelled as of recent. And people get concerned that that might happen to me. Well, I can safely say that it won't happen to me, because what I'm doing is an analysis based upon material. It's not idle speculation. And although I take the mick with some of my observations, well, that's the nature of parody and satire. I'm not gratuitously sat there defaming anybody. And therein lies a subtle but important distinction. It is an analysis of behavior, and my analysis is accurate.
It's damn good.
But I don't think that she's necessarily seen it herself, purely because there's so much stuff on YouTube about her that it's like hiding, it's like holding up a match to the sun. And I'm not particularly bothered about whether she sees it or not. The point is, I want more people to watch my videos to extend my legacy. She's just one person.
It would just be interesting, though, if she has.
Absolutely. Well, people ask me what would happen, HG, if she watched them, and I say
that's a good question.
She'd say that I was a hater and a racist,
of course,
and that I was a thoroughly nasty individual, and well, that's to be expected, because he's a narcissist, isn't he? So these are all just lies. Narcissists lie. So narcissism can't let it go. Hang on a second. He's right in what he's saying. It won't let that happen.
Yep, you're absolutely right about that. That's very interesting, man. It really sucks too, HG, that you brought it up. Your work is very high quality, and a lot of the high quality stuff on YouTube gets buried beneath the gossip and all the stuff. But
It
that is,
does.
I know you know how that is, but
Yeah.
your material actually in the sea of YouTube is valuable, and therefore it doesn't get seen as much as it should. But you're still
Yeah.
kicking some serious ass, my man, and just keep
I
doing the
am.
great work that you're doing. You
Thank you.
are, and you work
It is a
hard at
point
it.
of
You deserve it.
frustration. It is a point of
I feel
frustration
you.
at times because I I don't get the prominence that it deserves given the quality of the
You don't.
material.
You
That may
don't.
change over time. And of course, it does entertain me because I see those in the field of narcissism who plagiarize my work,
Mm.
and they just happen to have established larger followings than me.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand narcissism. I do. And there was a recent example of that where my viewers have pointed out saying, this person is using your terminology. Now, I don't have a problem with people saying fuel, for example, or talking about wounding,
Mm-hmm.
or saying HG Tudor categorizes narcissism into lesser, mid-range, and greater and ultra. That's fine. Or some people contact me and they say, HG, I'd like to use your material with credit. Most of the time, I'll let people because they've had the courtesy to ask me beforehand. But there are those that they hold themselves out as understanding narcissism, and they don't, and they do take parts of it. And of course, that is frustrating. Whilst on one hand, it's flattering because it recognizes the caliber of my material. What irritates me is they invariably then get it wrong when they then try and describe it themselves, which shows that they don't actually understand it, you see. And so it's so obvious that they're passing off my information, but then they don't explain it properly. And there's a certain doctor who's just done that recently with a video about mid-range narcissists, which is my terminology. Anyway, but
I feel you on that, man. I feel you on that.
yeah.
It's getting out there. People are stealing your stuff, and you know, you
exactly happens. And of course, there's a limit to what you can do through YouTube, but
yeah.
I just continue to provide I'm doing very well out of it. There's a lot of people that listen to it. It helps a lot of people in extending that legacy. And what has to be remembered, of course, is that over time, that it will get more and more prominent.
It will.
But it is a little bit frustrating when you see some material which is at a dross, and because of the way the algorithm has worked, they've just got more and more views and more people go to it. And it shows because people come across with their misconceptions about narcissism. And they go, no, you've obviously picked this up elsewhere and it's wrong. Stay here and listen, and you will learn. And it's the case of ensuring that there is that prominence. But it doesn't just go for my work. There's many people in different fields who provide high caliber work, but it doesn't get the necessary prominence that it ought to. But I've only actually been doing the channel for a year, so it's still early days yet.
I was going to ask you, do you ever get, I agree with everything that you said. Believe me, I feel you 100% on that as a fellow, YouTuber. I don't have anywhere near the following that you have, but I get, shadow ban, and it doesn't, they don't push stuff that's not garbage. And if it's high quality, like what you're putting out, you should have 1 million subscribers, honestly. But you know how the algorithm works, and you know the world we live in. It's kind of fucked up.
It is. I think it does amuse me in a wry fashion that I can provide a video that tells you absolutely nailed on information that would save somebody's life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can do a more tabloidy examination of Meghan Markle, and it ends up with 10 times the number of views.
It's hilarious, bro. I've been watching that in your videos.
That just tells you everything about the world, really, doesn't it?
It tells you everything you need to know. That's hilarious, by the way. Hey, I know you already know this, but just keep pumping out the quality. You have the quality, you have the gift. Just keep pumping it out, and don't worry about the rest of the crap. It'll come to you eventually. Unless YouTube censors all of us, HG. It's fucking stupid. They're coming for anybody that, God, I mean, you can't say anything nowadays. I hope you stick around because it's life-saving information. It's one of the few valuable channels. And I personally and 1,000 other people appreciate it, my man.
I do. Yeah, I can see in the comments and the emails that
I know. You get plenty of support.
I'm not concerned about it at all. It's just a sense of frustration because, understandably, it threatens a sense of control. But I deal with it by continuing to provide the excellent material that I do. And I know Rome was not built in a day, and it does take time to continue to build the momentum and connect up with other things so that it will increase that prominence. And I regularly get approached by larger companies in terms of production companies to do television work and film work. I've been approached by venture capitalists looking to invest. So there's some interesting things in the background which would enable me to suddenly go boom on a big scale.
Yes, I'm sure that's going to happen with you. I'm glad
that
has to
has
be the
to
right
be
opportunity.
my choosing. So when I deem that the time is right. So there's plenty of time yet to continue to accelerate.
I could definitely see that happening. I'm glad you told me that, man, because I kind of wondered your material's so different and interesting and valuable. So people have had to have reached out. On that note, HG, I wanted to know, like, how much does your family know? I know your situation with how you had to go into, and maybe you still have to do therapy in order to appease a certain thing with your parents. Do your family watch your videos? Do they know you're doing? They have
No.
They don't know your channel, bro?
No.
No. How can that be?
Because of the way that I have set things up, so they don't know about it. They know what I am because that has been as part of what the medical personnel have explained to them, because that was the way that it was set up. But what you've got to remember is that, for example, with my mother, although she's a narcissist, it would affect her control if she was to go around telling all and sundry what I was, because that would damage her facade. So she's not going to do so. And she's not going to suddenly be thinking about looking up, because none of them know that I operate under a pseudonym, you see.
I just can't believe that they wouldn't stumble across you and go, "That's our son." So you're out here.
Why would they be looking in? Why would they be looking in the first place?
I guess you're right, man. But it's just HG. It's so funny that you're out here like saving the world, saving people, and I guess if only your parents knew that, they would be so proud. But I guess your mother would be super threatened by control if she knew how successful you were in doing what you're doing, right?
But what you've got to remember as well is that I don't have particularly frequent interactions with my family at all. I move around a lot, and the way that I go about projecting my identity and what I do professionally all lends itself to ensuring that these people don't know what I am. In terms of what I am, through nearly all of my life, have operated in a particular way that I'll move amongst you without you even really knowing what I am. So it's not too much of an extension for me to do all of these things and to be able to do it without them having the slightest inkling that that's what's going on. I have, and I can't go into too much detail because it would give away what I do professionally, but I've done so many things where I've been completely under the nose of somebody doing certain things and they haven't got the slightest clue that it's me.
Wow, hence the ultra. I mean,
exactly.
That sounds impossible what you're doing.
Level of awareness that I have and the abilities that I have in order to keep all of that, because there are different versions of me, which fits with the fact that I'm a chameleon. So there is, in a sense, there is no real me.
Wow, man, that makes complete sense. It's just, every time we talk, my man, you blow my mind. You know, HG, that kind of leads into where we left off last time in the last interview. I had asked you how many empaths and or narcissists, and I guess we can throw normals in there, quote unquote, throw themselves at you on the daily in your blog, in your comment section, etc. And you said to keep a note of that for our next interview, because we might get some insight by you explaining how those different types actually interact with you. And also along that line, HG, if you don't mind, could you give me, to accent this, could you maybe just give me a day in the life of HG, like from when you wake up until you go to sleep? And then also, I don't want to throw too much on, but it's all kind of one question, just so the audience can get a feel for what it's like being a narcissist and being you, and get punched emotionally like you have a tendency to do in these videos. Can you squeeze in how the 4 necessities of a narcissist, fuel, control, residual benefits, and character traits, how you actually in a day in the life incorporate those, perhaps interacting with these various people?
Okay, well, I'll quickly touch on the point of the interaction that I have with people in what I would call blog world. So not my private life and not my professional life. There are empaths who are drawn to me because I am a a narcissist. So their addiction causes them to be drawn to me. Naturally, because there is a professional interaction between me and them, and they come to me honest and in a respectful fashion, they are only going to ever receive the help that they require. I won't toy with them, because it's a little bit like the concept of how you can't con an honest person. You look to con dishonest individuals. They are more susceptible to it because of their greed. So there are empathic individuals who are drawn to me because of the nature of their addiction. And also, of course, they're hugely grateful because I've enabled their lives to become vastly better than they once were. And their natural emotional empathy causes them to express their gratitude. The emails, I would not be here were it not for you, HG. And of course, they are drawn to the power that I exhibit. And of course, there is that mystery factor also, which they find alluring. Generally, with the empathic individuals, it manifests more in a kind of crush on a rock star rather than it being anything deadly serious. And one can have a little bit of a joke about it. But basically, although they might harbor these fantasies and desires about me, they know enough that they wouldn't really actually want to get anywhere close to me because they know what I'm like. And that it's almost like, oh, I'd love to meet you because you've helped me so much, but I'd be frightened of you because I know what you are. So it's a healthy, frightened respect, if you will. The narcissists, the unaware narcissists that come by, they're the ones that try to seduce me. They're the ones that are basically suggesting that they're saying, are you interested in having a correspondence? And I say, I don't have time for it. If you wish to speak to me, you must arrange a consultation like everybody else. And often they're quite insistent. Well, I don't want to pay for it. And I say, well, you're going to have to, because you're not getting, not getting any special favors. Oh, I'm not looking for special favors. Well, you are. You're asking to talk to me for nothing. But again, their narcissism blinds them to it. And they come with their flattery, and they're sending their pictures, and they send their videos exhibiting a lack of boundary recognition, a lack of emotional empathy, and it's all part of the seduction. And it's those individuals that I am contemptible of, because they're mid-range narcissists, and they're not coming with honesty, wanting actual help. They're there, of course, trying to fulfill their own prime aims, but they don't realize it. And it's those individuals that basically I'll either toy with for a short period of time or just ignore, because they are, in effect, just a minor irritant. And sometimes my other readers say, why don't you do something and crush them, particularly when they start getting a bit shirty? And I say, well, that would be giving them attention they don't deserve. They are mere insects at the feet of the colossus, which is the ultra. So I'm not going to waste my time. I could readily find who they are and make their lives a living hell, but I'm not interested in doing so because I've got much better things to be applying my time to, rather than these little mid-range, insignificant, mealy-mouthed cowards running around. So, turning to the question of what's a day in the life of me like, well, it obviously starts with when I wake up, which is roughly around about 5 a.m. And when I wake up, it's like a switch that I'm back in the game, and away we go. And at first, because I've got no fuel, there might be the first raspings of the creature that's mocking, that's trying to remind me of its presence. And then, dependent on where I am or what I'm doing, then the receipt of the fuel. So it might be if I'm lying in bed with my girlfriend, she turns and cuddles into me, that gives me some fuel. Or if she's awake and we speak, that gives me some fuel. Or I'll turn to one of my many phones and there are messages on there that provides me that fuel. So immediately the fuel starts to come in. And throughout the course of the day, when you talk about the prime aims, I am hoovering up this fuel around me, because my fuel matrix is both complex and extended, with an intimate partner primary source. I have non-intimate secondary sources, friends, people that I work with, family members. Then there's the tertiary sources, which of course, if I'm involved in blog world at some point during the day when I'm having a consultation, I'll gain fuel there. If I receive emails thanking me for what I've done, it's a little dollop of fuel. So, and I know a lot of people privately and professionally. So whilst I can have periods of being away from them and not in receipt of fuel, I interact with them repeatedly and regularly, either in person. As I talk to you now in my seat of power, I'm surrounded by various computers and monitors which are flashing away with messages and so forth. I'm
I
all
bet
the
you
sounds of the interrupters. And over on my left-hand side, there are 5 telephones here, all with various
Wow.
messages. So
How many cell
receipt of-
phones do you have? How many cell
I,
phones do you have?
I have 5 here and another 2 in another building. So, which cover various facets of my life. So, again, I can't tell you specifically what, but one of them, for instance, is to do with personal things. One is I just use for consultations. Another one is a particular part of work. A couple of them are burners, which I'll utilize. Others are used for professional reasons. So they're all. It's the compartmentalization as well to keep those worlds separate, distinct. So wherever I go, there's the fuel going to be coming in. It's not difficult for me. So, and I am a practice master at the assertion of control. So whilst there will repeatedly be threats to control because someone may say something that I don't like, I soon get that control. They might not respond to me, but I will get that control. And as I move through the day, it's almost like a shark swimming through the water. Right? So that I'm the one that's the beast in the sea, and I'm eating up whatever comes my way, and nothing is getting in my way, and I go after that. I sniff that target and I'll go after it and achieve what I want from it. So I'm well fueled repeatedly and often throughout the course of the day, depending on what I do. And it might be some days, of course, so typically, having got up, I then engage in physical exercise. So I do that first, and then I come back, I shower, I eat, and then I turn to my professional stuff, which may well be the picking up of messages and checking what's going on my various computers. And then it may well be the case that I could spend all day dealing with professional matters, but more usually I'll spend a few hours dealing with professional matters, and then I'll turn my attention to the blog world. So I might have an early consultation with somebody. I'll be addressing emails that have come in for me. I'll be dealing with narc detectors. There may be some content creations that I'll engage in, which then I send off to my videographer, and she processes those videos for me, which come back to me later in the day for uploading. It might be that I'll sit and write something. And then I may then have to deal with a meeting or going to see somebody professionally. Or maybe that doesn't happen. I spend all day doing blog stuff, but often it's interwoven. And then, of course, come the evening, it might be that I then have social engagements, spending time with my girlfriend, doing some more physical activity. I don't go to bed until roughly 1 a.m. I only need about 4 hours sleep. That's why I achieve so much. So sometimes my intimate partner, primary source, she may go to bed, say, at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and then that gives me 2 or 3 hours where I will perhaps do some writing, or I might watch a film, or I might engage in doing some narc detectors, or I might have to turn my attention to reports that have come in for what I'm doing professionally. So fortunately, because I don't need a lot of time, I'm able to divvy up my day. And there may be occasions where I go off grid because of what I do professionally. Nothing happens in blog world. There's no moderation, there's no content creation, no audio consultations take place. I'm doing all of the professional stuff. But because I have fingers in lots of different pies, and because I'm well practiced juggling all of these different plates, I can move between those different worlds very, very easily. And there are some days where I start off as person A, become person B, move on to person C, then come back being to person A.
Wow. Your IPPS, your intimate partner, doesn't she doesn't have any idea that you're HG Tudor?
No, where I do my work as HG Tudor is in a separate annex, which she understands is part of what I do professionally. She knows some of what I do professionally and therefore respects the confidentiality associated with that. So HG Tudor just slots underneath all of that. So it's she's not going to sort of walk past and hear me going, well, yes, so the first assertion of control with an narcissist.
She's not. How is she not
talking about?
Do you have to keep it quiet, HG? I mean, do you have to kind of keep a certain volume?
No, because the sound won't travel out because of the soundproofing that exists. But also, she has her own things that she gets on with. And she has an understanding of the world that I operate in professionally because she's kind of linked to that as well. So she understands there are certain things you just don't ask about.
And very interesting.
Yeah, so she understands and acknowledges and respects that. So therefore, it doesn't cause any complications for me. And hitherto, my base of operations for all things Tudor would be in a study, which was again sealed off from the other parts of the house. And there were former IPPSs who go, "What is it that you do in there?" And I would just say, "It's my professional work. You're not allowed to know about it."
Right, right.
I've told you that. You either respect that, or if you don't, then we've got a problem. And they back down.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there are some that are nosy, but they're never going to be able to find out what it is that I do, because I ensure that I keep it hidden. I'm very good at keeping things hidden, which includes good old HG.
I believe you. Do you mind if I ask, with your current IPPS, how long you've been together, and is she in the devaluation stage? Is she in the honeymoon?
She's not in devaluation, and we've been together for now just under about 2.5 years. The advantage is that we don't spend all of our time together. So there's particular travel commitments that we both have, and with then the efforts that I've put in place to be more pro-social, has so far meant the devaluation, in terms of the sustained devaluation, has not yet occurred. Whether it will remains to be seen.
Well, we know it will, based on your teachings, right?
Well, indeed, that's what waits in the post. And if that happens, then that's what happens. But it's
I wish you luck.
She didn't do her job properly, did she?
No, she didn't. That's what a narcissist would say, right? It's going to have to be her fault if and when it does go to devaluation. I personally wish you the best of luck. I don't know if that means anything to you, HG, but I'm pulling for you, my man. Can I ask you another question, if you don't mind? I mean,
yes,
I'm absolutely mesmerized.
I am under a time constraint.
Okay.
We'll talk again on another occasion, because I always enjoy our conversations.
I really do too. I'm absolutely mesmerized. And you're right. We're up at the hour. I know you have to go. I really appreciate the time. I'll fire one more question at you, and then I bid you farewell. Okay. So we discussed in a previous interview how a narcissist comes into being. Basically, a lack of a controlled environment and the genetic predisposition, the seed. Do you have any insight, before you roll out of here, on how an empath might come into being, or maybe even more importantly, how great swaths of humanity, the norms, how they come into being? Is there any insight you have on that?
Empaths, they are again created. There's a genetic predisposition towards becoming an empath. However, many empaths also come out of that lack of control environment, but it is not so sustained. So they don't have the genetic predisposition to becoming a narcissist, but they have the genetic predisposition to becoming an empath. And for instance, somebody who has that genetic predisposition and is brought up in a supportive environment invariably finds themselves becoming a standard empath. Okay? Super empaths and codependents, they are born out of the genetic predisposition, but often will invariably find themselves in a lack of control environment. And the codependent was going on the road to becoming a narcissist, and then it became arrested because of a genetic change. Whereas with the super empath, there is something different about them, because the codependent finds validation by chaining themselves to the narcissist. The super empath is created by going, hang on a second, something isn't right here, and drawing a line in the sand. So empaths are invariably formed because of a genetic predisposition, but certain empaths come into being because of their exposure to narcissists.
Yes.
So that fuses what they become. Now, with normals again can be exposed to narcissists when they're young, but basically they don't have the genetic predisposition that leads towards being an empath or a narcissist. That's missing, and therefore they have emotional empathy, but for a small radius of people. So it transpires they become that, and they're the majority. So it's actually sort of like special ingredients is probably the best way of putting it for the formation of a narcissist or an empath.
Yeah.
That's why if you look at a clock and put the narcissist at 1 o'clock and the empath at 11 o'clock, and you go clockwise from 1 to 11, the narcissist and the empath are way apart from one another. But if you go 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, we're actually quite close. And that's because of the circumstances of formation.
That's very interesting. And I want to pick it up from right there. If we do talk again, HG, I
Yes,
really
let's
appreciate.
do that, because there's a lot more I can say about that, and we're a bit constrained by time.
I
So
understand, but what you just said made a ton of sense to me just in that brevity. I can't wait to pick it up from there. Can you, if you don't mind, HD, could you tell people real quick where they could find you and your materials and
certainly,
what you offer, if you don't mind?
not at all. My blog is at narcsit.com, narcsit.com. I have a YouTube channel, which is HG Tudor, Knowing the Narcissistic Ultra. And I'm also found on Twitter under HG Tudor and also on Instagram. But the main platforms that I utilize, and I'm on Facebook under Knowing the Narcissist, but the main places to find me on my blog, which I've just described the web address for, and also on YouTube. That's where most of my time is spent in terms of answering comments and interacting with my audience. So those are the best places to go to in terms of a wealth of information. And you'll also find at the blog details about the Knowledge Vault, so you can access more of my material. And if you want to use my personal services, if you're concerned that you're with a narcissist, or you want to know what type of empath you are, or indeed you are an empath, or you want to talk to me because there's burning questions you want to put to me about your circumstances, you can access all of my range of services in the menu at narcsit.com.
I really like talking to you. I can't wait to talk to you again. Have a great day, and I really appreciate your time, HG.
Thank you, Doug.
Take care, my friend.